I think it's fair to say that my most popular video, the thing of mine that has gotten the most exposure, has been the guest video that I did for Pierre Trudank's channel, where I explained monarchism. And so a lot of people who aren't necessarily so familiar with my body of work have tried to talk to me, and they've said, "Hey, Matt, are you really a monarchist for real?" And I have to kind of explain them. Well, yes, I am, but not just a monarchist. I was kind of explaining at the time of that video, I was just explaining the basics of monarchism and monarchy as it's kind of like a political thing, which is a very basic thing and not into the more advanced things, which I'm going to go into in this video. And that is the ideology that I've created pretty much all by myself, more or less, which is Monarcho-Communism. And I'm kind of, I guess you could say, the global leader of the Monarcho-Communist gang. Is how I've kind of likened myself, styled myself. And again, this is going to be a very basic, simple overview of monarcho-communism, as you can probably see by the length. It's a very complex ideology, obviously. So I'm going to put, I've written several books on the topic, so I'm going to put an Amazon link in the description, which will link you to those books if you are so interested in picking them up and learning more about monarcho-communism. Yeah, this is going to be kind of a simple overview. So, where to begin? So, monarcho-communism, it traces its roots from Marxism. It is a Marx-inspired form of socialism. But where it differs has a lot to do mostly with, kind of three simple kind of deviations from Marxism. One is the way that the state works. Two is the way that the economy works. And three is the way that the society will function on a social level. So the big difference with the way leadership works is that instead of having a revolutionary vanguard, a dictatorship of the proletariat, councils and committees and all that kind of stuff, we kind of cut out the middleman in monarcho-communism. And instead, we just have a single leader. You can call it a king, you can call it a, whatever title you think sounds the best. And we have a single leader who is, kind of the most powerful figure in the country. Will usually take leadership, and the mantle of leadership. When that person dies or they get too old to lead or whatever, the leadership is passed down to their eldest son. I took a lot of inspiration from this from Judaism, obviously. Although I kind of am taking a different approach, going specifically with the eldest son rather than necessarily whoever the leader thinks is the most fit for the job, because quite frankly I think that allows for too much corruption. Children can kind of curry favor with their father or whatever. So I think it's much more it's much more fair, it's much more logical to just make it the first son, and that son will kind of just happen to be they'll learn to grow into their role, basically. And that's kind of just how it'll continue, is how the leadership of the country will work. Secondly, economically, obviously we continue with kind of the whole getting rid of money thing, but we kind of lessen that to a certain extent. We keep money among the I guess you would say the overseers of the society, I guess, the bureaucrats who kind of oversee things. We keep money amongst them, the government officials who oversee the land. they continue to use money mostly to, acquire goods, soldiers, supplies, stuff like that. Kind of the more the lower classes. Obviously this is all pre-communism, so there are still classes at this point. But the lower classes of people, the farmers, the tradesmen, they will primarily use kind of a form of barter, although a bit more advanced than that. But basically just barter with the supplies that they make, the food that they grow, whatever. And then eventually that'll kind of just turn into communism, later on. And final big change is to the social aspect. Most communism, most Marxian-based communism is atheistic or at least secularistic, but in monarcho-communism, it's very much a religious society. Whatever religion, it doesn't particularly matter necessarily, but the power of the church kind of serves as checks and balances. I kind of take inspiration from the United States of America, as it is a very successful socialist society. As one of the great writers, Cenk Uygur, has kind of pointed out. Sorry, I just kind of was reminded of a joke there for a second. But yeah, the church will kind of serve as a way to check the power of the king or the supreme leader, the chairman, whatever. And essentially, the people, the lower class people mostly, will be subservient to the church to a certain extent. The morals of communism will basically be instilled into them by the church. And also, we are going to kind of have to cut back on women's rights just a little bit. Unfortunately, that's just kind of a prerequisite for communism. I hate to say it. I personally would love, in an ideal fantasy world, for women to have equal rights, but that's just not going to be able to happen, unfortunately. So women are going to primarily have to go back to, having limited rights. They're going to have to kind of basically do what their husband is saying. But on the plus side, we are going to get rid of the age of consent so that, you can marry the women off earlier. So again, that's kind of an overview, again, with how it kind of deviates from Marxism, in the parts of Marxism that apply to socialism and communism as opposed to the other bits. So yeah, I hope this was an informative video kind of teaching you about monarcho-communism. And again, if you're interested in learning more, please check in the description. I'll put an Amazon link to my book that I've written extensively about the subject in, and hope that you'll become more interested and potentially even, consider adopting it.